Two of the things that I love are when I hear people say, I had no idea the harp could do that. Another thing I love is when men come up to me after the show and they said, my wife dragged me to this show. I didn't want to come because it was a harp. And I loved it.
I'm delighted to be speaking today with Deborah Henson-Conant. She's performing this evening as part of the Virginia Arts Festival's Norfolk Fringe. That'll be tonight at 8 o'clock at the Robin Hickson Theater. And Deborah, I understand you've done so many different things musically. You've played with everybody from symphony orchestras to rock bands. You improvise and compose and sing, and you've been called the Jimi Hendrix of the harp. So maybe I should start by asking, is there anything you don't do with your music that you would still like to do someday?
Oh, that I would like to do someday. Well, there's a lot of things I don't do, but I certainly do a lot of things that I like to do. And one of the things that ended up having me do so many different things is that for me, what's really interesting is taking one instrument or one idea and seeing all the different things that I can do with it. That's just part of what's interesting to me creatively. And I love bombast. I love intimacy. I love energy, and authenticity. Those are really important to me. And so I've gotten to explore that by going big with a symphony orchestra, but that also makes it intimate, and also touring with a rock band, and then getting to do my own solo one-woman shows, which is what I'll be doing here as part of the Fringe. And I love that range of things, getting to do that range of things, from intimate, who will sing for the nightingale, to very, very,
so tell us a little more about your instrument.
Yeah, well, I started out as a kid writing musical theater, which is one of my big passions, and my music combines, I guess I would call it, blues, Latin, jazz, and musical theater on electric harp with voice, if you can imagine that. So, but when I started playing the harp, I started playing the big concert harp. My college needed a harpist. I'd had a couple lessons as a kid because I took lessons in all the instruments, and so I became the harpist. I discovered that trying to get a 6-foot, 85-pound concert harp safely around the world can be really problematic.
For sure.
Yeah, and so I envisioned this harp that I could wear on my body, almost like an artistic prosthetic that would become part of me, like so I could be a musical centaur. One thing I love about the instrument is that I have been able to find and express my own voice with it. And that is what I love when I go to see other artists, is when someone has taken an instrument that may have been used in one way forever, and they find a new side of it. And then you see a new side of it, and then you start thinking, oh, maybe there's new sides to other things in the world. And so it really opens your mind up. I took this idea around the world to all the harp builders that I knew, and they made me all these little monsters. And then finally I took it to the most visionary harp builder in the world. His name was Joel Garnier. I actually made a prototype. I made my own prototype. I took it to him and I showed him. And after I showed him, he said, Deborah, now I understand what you want. So this is the power of a prototype, even if I couldn't really make it. After that, I collaborated with them for the last 20 years, creating a harp that now is played all over the world and, in fact, is named after me. And it's an 11-pound, 32-string carbon fiber harp that I strap on and I play in a show.
One of the things I was wondering about, actually, was how you started out musically. Were you a classical harpist to begin with? And it sounds like maybe?
I had an entire life before I started playing the harp. I really developed my musical style before the harp. And to be perfectly honest, when I started playing the harp, I was like, oh, I can make money with this to support my musical theater habit. Then it took off on its own. And then what I realized later on when I finally had this instrument is that I could put those two things together. My love of music theater, my love of classical music, my love of jazz, put them together in one show where I am basically expressing me.
So what should the audience expect at that show this evening?
They should expect to see energy. They should expect to see intimacy. They should expect to see a harp in the way that they've never seen it before. A lot of people bring their kids to shows because they want to show them what you can do with an idea, how you can shrink it down, how you can change it, all the different sounds that you can bring out of it. People are going to hear, I love flamenco. They're also going to hear really beautiful, simple songs, and they're going to hear a lot of sounds coming out of the harp that they've never seen before, never heard before. I'm saying seen because a lot of times I've had deaf people come to my shows and say, oh, I love the show because I could see what other people were doing.
Do you play music that other people compose or mostly your own compositions?
Mostly my own compositions, except I really love Take 5 by Dave Brubeck. And I love where that piece takes me. I actually get lost in it, which is really fun, and then get to come back. And that's a piece, it was scary for me to do at first because I really do get lost. And I thought, oh, the audience is there, what are they going to do when I get lost? And people loved it. We love it when we see something new and we know it's new and we know it's never been seen before. And we know that person is trusting us to go there. And that tune, I love that tune because it opens me up to that. Sometimes, this is so bizarre, sometimes I play Danny Boy because it is so completely unexpected and I love reinventing it to be something tender and meaningful to me. That's what I'm always looking for in music, is what does this mean to me and how can I share that with the audience? I also love, we were talking off the air, I also loved what you said about sounds and how pushing the instrument to new sounds, and I think what we're trying to do is push it to have more and more of a human voice. That's been fascinating to me with the harp because I've learned to bend notes so that I can have an inflection with what I'm saying, with what I'm playing.
How does that relate to using your actual human voice and the singing that you do?
Right. I keep forgetting that. I keep forgetting that I sing because singing was my first language. So to me, my life would be so much easier if I just sang everything I said. Because then I know that you know what I'm trying to say. So for me, singing is so much easier than speaking. And then when I'm singing with my harp, I feel like I can be musical, I can embody musical theater. I've got the orchestra right there, I'm playing it, and then I get to just speak to the audience in that voice.
So you're doing a solo show tonight.
That's right.
Yeah, and that really does allow you to be responsive in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I love working with orchestras because it's exciting to me to hear the other voices. And when I orchestrate, and I orchestrate all my own work, I literally think of each of the instruments as a character. So I feel like I'm interacting with these characters. But there's nothing like the freedom of getting on stage alone and being able to go wherever you want to go. Briefly, I was interested in what you're doing with the flute and that you're taking that into different sounds. My instrument comes from my fingers. It lets my fingers speak, and your voice is speaking in different voices when you do the flute.
Right. Well, the flute is, sometimes people describe it as being, very close to the human voice because you don't have a reed or anything else kind of mediating that sound. You're really using the air directly to create the sound in a way that's somewhat similar to singing. And of course, in, some of the different sounds or contemporary techniques we use on the flute, a lot of them involve the voice in various ways as well. You can do harmony with yourself, singing and playing, or different kinds of consonants or vocal effects. I don't write my own music, but I really enjoy collaborating with composers. I've done a bit of improvising, and I really think that the performer has a very active, creative role. Even if you're not the composer, I think that it's really a lot of creative agency on the performer's part to bring the music to life. So that's kind of how I see what I do.
As a composer, that's really meaningful to me when the performer will take that collaborative role and bring a life to my music that I wasn't even aware there was there. And sometimes that happens naturally, and sometimes it happens when we're together. And they're like, well, it'd be kind of cool if you did this. And then I'll hear it and I'll be like, yes. Mm-hmm. It was interesting what you said about the flute without the reed, because when you said that, I realized that our vocal cords are almost like reeds. And so the flute, in a sense, is a direct line to the breath that's different, more direct.
Yeah, maybe even more than
speaking.
The voice. Yeah.
And which is why when people say to me, talking about music is like dancing about architecture. And I say, yes, that's what's so exciting about it, is that when you do dance about architecture or you talk about music, you learn things and you can apply them, and they open your mind in ways that is beyond what would happen if you just stuck to one thing.
We'll sing for the night.
Deborah Henson-Conant, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you.